So we developed a process that convert agricultural waste material, like these corn cobs, and turn it into charcoal, like these. And it turns out you can use almost any agricultural waste material. This is bagasse, which is the waste after the sugarcane juice is extracted from the cane. But these burn too quickly, and so we needed to find a way to make them burn more like wood charcoal. So we crushed them, mixed them with a binder, and created a mixture like this. You can compress this into charcoal briquettes, something like this, and then you can dry it in the sun and cook with it. When we cooked with them, they burned pretty well, but they were fragile, and they fell apart as they were cooking, and we lost some of the energy as the charcoal briquettes fell to the ground through the grates of the cooking stove, and so they didn't burn as well as wood charcoal. So we had a design challenge here. We wanted to produce stronger briquettes so that they would burn more like wood charcoal and would be acceptable to the Haitian market. So the first thing we did was we started gathering information. We learned as much as we could about charcoal, how it's made, and how it's used in Haiti. We learned what people liked and what they didn't like about charcoal. We learned about how charcoal briquettes were made, and we looked for machines to see what was available on the market. We found that the smallest scale machine that you could get was about $8,000 for a machine that you could buy from China that produced briquettes at a pretty high rate. But we knew that $8,000 was much too expensive for Haitian farmers. So we wanted to try to create a charcoal press that was affordable, but still produced a high quality product. So we had learned a lot, and now we were ready to start thinking of solutions. And so we started thinking about what are different ways that we could compress this charcoal mixture into a strong briquette. And we started thinking about using a lever, for example, so that you could increase the pressure and form a briquette that way. We also thought of using something like a screw press that would allow you to create pressure by tightening a screw down and like a clamp. And we also thought about using impact to form the briquettes. And we did some experimentation with each of these methods. We tested levers, and we determined that in order to get the pressure that you needed to make a briquette that wouldn't fall apart when it cooked, the lever would have to be really long, and that would make it both expensive and difficult to transport. We found that using a screw press was really tedious. It took a long time to open and close the press each time, and we found that it was just too slow to be an effective method of production. But impact had a lot of potential. Using a hammer to create a briquette gave you a lot of force that produced a nicely compacted briquette, and so that's the approach that we chose to make. So the first thing that we did was we built a prototype. So this is the first prototype that we built, and let me show you how it works. So you take the charcoal and you put it in the press, give it a few good whacks, remove the pin here and open it up, and here's the briquette. When you dry this in the sun, it becomes nice and hard, and it burns almost exactly the same as wood charcoal. So this was our first prototype, and now we were thinking, how could we improve upon it? What we found was that it produced about 4 or 5 briquettes a minute, and we thought that this was pretty good, but it was slow, and there were some challenges when you were using it. So in order to gather information, what we did was we took videos of different people using the press, and we timed how long they took for different parts of the process, cleaning out the press between briquettes, picking up the hammer, putting it down, etc. And we found a lot of time was wasted just fiddling with the machine and with the different elements. And so we thought that we could improve this design. So we started thinking of different ideas for how could we make the filling easier? How could we make it so that it is easier to clean? And how could we increase the throughput? And so after going through a process of trying out different ideas, we came up with the next prototype. And here it is. This one is much easier to fill, as you can see. You just put the charcoal in through this side funnel here. Once again, it uses a plunger, but you'll notice as I use the press that I don't have to put the hammer down at all. I can just keep it in my right hand. I can press the briquette, open this sliding tray right here, give it a tap, and here's the briquette. So this one is quite a bit faster than the other. And in fact, one of the nice features of it is as this plate slides in and out, it actually cleans itself. So we never have to clean this press as we're using it. So this briquette press produces about 7 or 8 briquettes per minute. So it's almost twice as fast as this one. On the other hand, it's a little more expensive. This press costs about $20 to $22 to produce. This one's about $25 to $28. But we felt that the performance of this press was pretty good, and we were ready to take it to Haiti now and to get feedback. So we brought it out and we asked people to try it, and we got their feedback. They liked a lot of things about this press. They really liked the briquettes that were produced. They were a high quality briquette, and they burnt actually better than wood charcoal. They were easier to light, and they lasted just as long. And they also really liked being able to make their own briquettes. It turns out that it was much easier than the traditional method of charcoal making. So we thought we had really hit on something. And so we asked them, would you buy this press? And they answered with a resounding no. We were surprised. Why not? They said, well, it's too expensive. But the original machine that we were competing against was $8,000, and this one was only $25,000. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't have $25, it doesn't matter if it's $25,000 or $8,000, it was still too expensive. So we had to go back to the drawing board again, and we had to think about how could we make it cheaper. Right? And so we tried to learn from people what were the characteristics that they liked about this machine and what were things that we could change so that we could reduce the cost. There's a few key ways to do that. One way is to get rid of material. If you want to make something 10 times cheaper, get rid of 90% of the material, and that gets you there. The other thing we could do is replace expensive material with cheaper material. And that gave us this next press. So you can see there's almost nothing left at this point. Just a small plunger and this small portion here. And this one costs a lot less. This costs about $5 instead of $25. So we don't need the cup anymore because you can use the press itself to scoop up the material. Then you compress the brick, a tap and a push, and then here's the briquette. And it turns out that not only is this press simpler and cheaper, it's actually more effective. This one here produced 4 briquettes for about $20 to $22. This one here produced 7 or 8 briquettes for about $28. For $5, this briquette press produced 10 to 12 briquettes per minute. So it's again almost twice as fast as this other one. So you can see how the design process was used to create a solution and refine a product to produce something which was simple, cheap, and beautiful, which is something that I think we should always strive to do as designers. And now we'll talk a little bit about developing an implementation plan once we have a product that we think is ready to take to the field. So we designed this press to be used by individual farmers, and this was largely because we wanted the profit from the project to go to these farmers. And so that was the way that we originally started thinking about the implementation of this project. And so we started a pilot project training farmers and producing the charcoal, and then developing small micro enterprises around the production of the briquettes. But one of the things that we found was that although they adopted it for their own use, they didn't really do much in terms of selling it in the market and expanding the impact beyond their own personal use. And while we were happy that they were using their own briquettes, we wanted to have a larger impact from that. And so we had to go back to the design process and think about what were the challenges with this model and how could we improve it. So we started looking at whether or not we would want large-scale production, medium-sized, small enterprises, or micro-enterprises, and we looked at the pros and cons about each one of these. And we decided that what we wanted to do was we wanted to look at small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and to help them develop the capacity to produce charcoal briquettes as a product, not as something for the home use. And so we looked at this, and we also decided that we needed to look more broadly at where we were doing this project. Haiti was one place where there's a lot of pressure on producing alternative fuels, but it turns out that East Africa is another. And in fact, in East Africa, there's a lot better market influences in order to have a successful business creating and selling charcoal briquettes. So after doing this research, we thought about different ways that we could engage entrepreneurs and different types of entrepreneurs to engage. And over the course of the next few years, we worked with several partners in Tanzania and Uganda, and we helped them to develop the capacity to produce alternative charcoal.